Okay, so first of all, I'm going to say that since this particular video doesn't use a ton of visuals, it's mostly just me reasoning things out through my own dialogue. I am doing this as a podcast style video again this time, which means there is an audio only version of this video that is up in a link in the description somewhere. So if you have roughly 10 minutes of activity to do and you need something to listen to while you're doing it, that might be it. Just FYI. Anyway, moving on. Okay, so I've still got Steven Universe the movie on the brain, obviously. And the next thing I wanted to talk to you guys about is something that somebody actually brought up just yesterday, as of this recording, on my Tumblr, which was pretty cool. It's always nice to see that you guys are interested in the subjects that I'm going to be tackling. That said, I almost made this my first theory about the movie, but I felt that the theory as to where Spinell got the various tech that she came with was important to this one for context, because in addition to the main topic of this video, we're also going to be talking about an alternate theory for where that Rejuvenator, that really cool poofy scythe that Spinell brought with her, came from. Or rather, just kind of adding to that last theory a little bit, because if you guys missed that last theory, I postulated that because it was an old school weapon, and a pretty rare one according to Bismuth, that it's possible that Pink Diamond just kinda had it laying around. And I didn't really go into much more detail because I had this video planned to sort of explain why Pink Diamond would have it just laying around. I also postulated in that last theory that Spinell got that technology from a lab that Pink Diamond set up in an attempt to sort of usurp her own colony out from underneath the other Diamond's noses. And that lab may or may not have been built into the same rock formation that the garden was built onto. So keep that in mind as this particular theory goes on. I'm not saying that Rose ever stored the Rejuvenator at the garden, just that it was somewhere that she might have snuck off to from the garden with Spinell. And for those of you who argue that this is something that Rose wouldn't do, I refer you to Rose's secret armory, a place where she literally did this exact thing. Like, obviously the armory was from much later in the timeline, but still. There's absolutely nothing in the lore about Rose to suggest that she didn't have something like that in Homeworld's territory as well as on Earth. That said, and like I said, and as the title of this video suggested, we're not actually talking about the Rejuvenator primarily today. We're not even really talking about Spinell, even though she's definitely worth talking about more because she was a great character. No, actually, we're talking about Pearl. I gotta say, seeing the various crystal gems get rebooted by that Rejuvenator, it was hard in every single case, but the hardest to see like that was definitely Pearl. Seeing her go all the way back to that factory setting, super obedient, super devoted to her literal slave master Pearl, that was rough and super duper creepy. As was that song that she sang after the reboot. And I am calling it a reboot because the song is literally called system/boot.pearlfinal3.info. Like, how much creepier does that make that song than it already was? Like, it was already pretty freaking creepy hearing Pearl talk like that, even in sing-song form, even if Dee Dee's vocal performance was amazing, of course. But the fact that the song's title, even, is a reminder that Pearl has been transformed back into what she was back before she was a person, even, really. It's, I'd say, moderately existentially horrifying, but if that's all that it was, we wouldn't be talking about it in this video. This title is so much more than just creepy. It's also lore. At least I'm pretty sure that it's lore. Particularly that little number 3 in the title. That's the kind of parenthetical numeral qualifier that gets tacked on to the end of a file name if you've downloaded it a certain number of times, with the second instance of it being 2 and the third instance of it being 3. That suggests that this has happened to Pearl before, that she is booted up into that default Pearl state 2 other times before. And, like, obviously she would have had to boot up for the first time when she was given to Rose, back when Rose was still Pink Diamond, and Pearl was, as the crew said, given to her to try and make her happy. But what's the second time? Prior to what we saw in the movie, at least. And by now you may have guessed that that's exactly what this theory is going to try to address. There is, of course, no way to tell how long it had been since Rose had been given Pearl before Rose got her colony. We know entirely from stuff in the movie itself that Rose had to have had Pearl for at least a little while beforehand, since Pearl recognized Spinell, and Spinell recognized Pearl as Pink Diamond's Pearl, which also incidentally suggests that Rose didn't get Spinell until at the same time that she got Pearl, or a little bit after, since Spinell didn't seem to recognize Pearl as Rose's second pearl, just as Rose's pearl. But that's really all we can tell, because we don't know exactly how long ago Pink Diamond got Spinel either. We just know that she didn't see Spinel again after that day when she finally got her colony. And on the Earth moon base, Pearl still seemed pretty subservient to Rose. Like, suggesting to Rose that Rose turn into a quartz soldier and go down to Earth and hang out with her people, that sounds like kind of a rebellious, independent thinking kind of thing, but really she was just trying to answer to the desires of her diamond. But that still doesn't really tell us anything. Pearl could have been subservient like that for thousands of years. Thankfully, pinning down exactly when Rose got Pearl isn't really important here. It's just important to keep in mind that Pearl, back when she was fully subservient to her diamond, appeared to be very much like she was after this system reboot. After all, the implication has always been that just like with all the other crystal gems, Pearl's journey to becoming an actual real person, to finding who she was apart from what was imposed upon her by Homeworld, didn't really start until she got to Earth. But really, Pearl's behavior prior to her spending a great deal of time on Earth, while it suggests that she was booted up for the first time relatively soon before all that happened, it can also mean that she was rebooted relatively soon before all that happened. And yes, I am suggesting that at some point prior to the events of Rose getting her colony in the subsequent war, a rejuvenator was used on Pearl to restore her to factory settings so that Rose could make use of her. This goes back to that old theory that Pearl, because she doesn't seem very customized to either Rose or Pink Diamond, had some owner prior to Rose. And unfortunately, this particular song title doesn't do anything to suggest who that prior owner might have been, though I still think it could have been White Diamond, which is something that I will talk about again in a minute, I promise. But imagine this for a second. Imagine that Rose, back when she was still Pink Diamond, back before she had gotten her colony, gets her original pearl taken away because, well, she got too friendly with it. With her. Sorry, I'm still having trouble thinking of Pink Pearl as an actual person independent from White Diamond. But let's say that happened, and then relatively soon afterwards, the other diamonds realized that they just kind of made things worse because now Pink was all pink about not having a pearl anymore. So at the same time, they both gave her a new pearl, worried that if they simply rejuvenated her old pearl, the fact that her old pearl had such a strong personality would mean that the process would just undo itself. And also gave her Spinel so that she would have someone to play with besides her pearl, and she wouldn't corrupt another pearl in that way. Let's even say, hypothetically, that Rose was given a rejuvenator, one color-coded after herself, and was expected to rejuvenate that pearl on her own, and she did, but because she was still so upset that she had had her original pearl taken away, she didn't bother to customize the new one, and that's why Pearl looked like a default settings Pearl in those old flashbacks of her and Rose. Yes, you heard me right. I am suggesting that Pearl had another life prior to the life that she shared with Rose on Earth. A life apart from and beyond the life that she had with Rose back on Homeworld. And on top of that, I'm suggesting that Rose was the one who was made to end that first life of Pearl's, and not even in like a malicious way either. This theory is not calling Rose a bad person for doing this. Like, technically, I disagree with anybody doing this to anyone, assuming that it were possible to actually do this to real people, but I do think that Pearl is probably better off now than she would have been had she remained that first version of herself. So, like, I'm not even calling Rose out as being terrible here. Like, I think she is objectively, and I don't understand why people keep arguing that point with me. But in this case, this was definitely, I think, a good thing. And the fact that White Diamond then took Pink Diamond's old pearl as her own is what suggests that our pearl was once hers. That she effectively traded them and then imposed her will on Pink's pearl as a reminder to Pink of the fact that she had ruined a pearl at one point in her life. A constant reminder of the consequences of her actions. If this is the case, then it's still possible for our pearl to have once been White Diamond's pearl, and there's even a plausible reason for why she wouldn't remember that anymore, because by now she's that second person, and is, I guarantee, more of a complete person than she ever would have been under White Diamond's direct command. So even if she was reminded of her past life with White Diamond as she was reminded of her past life as a crystal gem in the movie, I highly doubt that she would reset to that original Pearl Final 1 version of herself. But it is still possible that if she's reminded of that past life enough, some of the memories might come back to her, which opens the door to some really interesting lore stuff going forward if this is true. I mean, after all, if Pearl did belong to somebody else first, even if it wasn't White Diamond, she would have had to be rejuvenated in order to be given to Rose. We hear from freshly rebooted Pearl that she will serve Greg eternally unless he disappears, but we see in the movie that rejuvenating her resets that and causes her to imprint on someone else. As for why I think White would give her own Pearl to Pink, maybe it was a placating measure, maybe she wanted Pink to believe that White actually wanted her to be happy, maybe she thought that giving Pink something of her own would convey that properly, and Pink being Pink just kind of didn't care. Otherwise, I don't really know why she would do that. I'm sure they could have made Pink a new Pearl if they had really wanted to. But that's really beside the point. Because at the end of the day, I obviously can't say that this is true. I'm just saying it's still possible, and now we know how it could have happened, and if it is true, it's super interesting. I want to know more about it. And as for how this elaborates upon where it was that Spinel got that rejuvenator from, I already explained in that last theory, and reminded you all in this one that I think that Spinel got all of that tech from some armory that Rose built for herself during her time as Pink Diamond. If Rose was expected to use the rejuvenator on her new Pearl herself, then who's to say that she wouldn't have hung on to it afterwards and stored it in that same armory? I certainly hope I'm right about this, because if I am, and if I'm also right that this song title was a hint at this, all of this would seem to suggest that something along the lines of this is going to be an ongoing storyline, or at least the storyline of an episode or two next season, and I'd really like to see that. It would be super neat. I also want to commend the crew for sneaking lore, or at least potential lore, into the title of one of these songs. Like, Steven Universe song titles are always meaningful in some way or another, but this, I think, is the first time that genuine lore has been conveyed to us first through a song title, and that's super cool. I only wish that the song itself wasn't Pearl just singing about the stuff going on around her in that scene, that there was some lore in the song itself as well, but there's really not, at least as far as I can tell. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I missed something. If I did, of course, tell me, because I'd love to know. And of course, just in general, what did you guys think of this theory? Have I compiled this information correctly, or could I do with a system reboot? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over my Discord, link in the description. But either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.